Joining us here in the studio is University of Georgia professor Cham Dallas, who's also a CBS News nuclear safety consultant. Good to have you with us. And boy, have we been talking about this. It's been a week now. When you look at the situation, and they're trying so desperately every day with what we're keep being told is a new last-ditch effort, how much longer can these efforts last?
Well, these people are under a lot of pressure, particularly the ones in the control room, the 50 people that we've been talking about so much. They're going to keep going. I mean, you would think they'd get worn out, but they're still rolling.
But is there an end game? I mean, what are they going towards?
Well, the end game for us is to keep those reactor cores covered over the next several days in particular. Now, especially if they might get power back in there, that'll help a lot. But those spent fuel rods in that mysterious pool there in Unit 4, that's the one to keep an eye on, because we really don't know what's going on.
We don't really know what's going on. There are conflicting reports about whether or not all the water was gone. We know the water has to stay on them. But looking long term, how long do you have to stay in there? How long do you make sure that you keep water on these spent fuel rods? Is there a time when eventually the plant closes down safely? You
never relax on this one. Not when you've had a derangement of the fuel rods to begin with, until they go in and get those rods and get them out of there. Okay, that's a process at some later time. But right now, this doesn't go away. In fact, if there's been significant melting of those fuel rods and those pellets pile up in the bottom, ironically, putting water back in there actually won't save us, okay? There's other aspects to this. There's other issues coming up over the next week or two that they're going to have to deal with.
So as much as this seems like a long-term process to get it somewhat under control, this is only the very beginning, is what you're telling me.
This is only the very beginning. This goes on.
So then give me a timeline. A, how long does it go on? And B, what happens next? Because it sounds like you're saying the water won't work for so long. Chernobyl, they dumped dry materials, correct?
Yes,
is that an option?
Chernobyl was the dry nuclear disaster. Fukushima was the wet nuclear disaster. There was advantages to being wet. Believe me, you don't want a fire like Chernobyl. That's what made it so bad. What has held this down is the water. However, that water creates long-term problems. I remind you, we're 25 years out from Chernobyl, and they're still messing with that thing. We're having to build another containment area over the top of the old one. Some people I know from the United Nations are involved with that.
So what happens to all this water then? You mentioned that you know, what can get into the water. The water that they're using here, does it just evaporate? Where does it go?
I've done studies for 20 years in Georgia about what happens when radionuclides, radioactive particles, get into that water. The good news is about 99% of it goes down into the sediments, and then the water is kind of a protective layer above you. But that's an eventual process. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the ecosystem around that reactor area over the next decades.
So bottom line is there's still a lot of work ahead, and we are not near the end.
We're not near the end, and it could go some crazy ways still over the next few days.
All right, well, we'll hope that is not what happens. We'll continue to watch it with you. Cham Dallas, thanks.